it within 6 months.
And that's what we're seeing now, is Fast Roads has to do one last tranche of borrowing in order for operations until our full revenue begins to flow in. And we don't want to go borrow until we're absolutely certain that the network can be the backbone network.
Is that going to be, you have like a June deadline?
That's the federal deadline.
Okay.
But actually, two things. One, the NTIA, our program project officer is a guy in Washington, the NTIA, who actually went to top
What's that NTIA?
National Telecommunications
and Information
Administration. So it's the ERA implementer for telecommunications.
They're part of FCC.
No, they're part of Commerce, right?
Yeah, it's part of Commerce.
Okay, makes sense.
But they're managing all the broadband projects, both the BIP and the BTOP projects, acronyms for the two.
The Department of Agriculture gets involved too.
Yeah, through
Rural development.
Is that Russ?
Yeah.
Rural utilities.
Yeah.
But the project program managers at NTI have not seen any state like New Hampshire in terms of full attachment issues. Not a single state in the U.S. is like this state. So they're shaking their heads thinking what gives, and
If there's the possibility of going into court, it all just goose up any sort of business plan because
yeah.
it has to be sort of.
Well, and your investors then get nervous, and understandably so.
Because it's a major risk. I mean, you can't do any capital forecasts.
So they may well extend the deadline.
Yeah, but that's one advantage that having fast roads in New Hampshire will hopefully be able to guinea pig. Fix it essentially. Because,
Joy, yeah.
But some of that do it.
I'm trying to remember the homes tax rate.
They are now.
Okay, I was going to say, that's the thing, if they're not serving a community benefit by not letting other people use them, then they should be homes taxes. Regular property.
Well, the poles themselves are taxed, and the attachments to the poles, and in fact, Fairpoint has filed suit against over the taxing methodology. Yeah, well, I just think it'll be interesting to see. I mean, as it's amazing, a river separating two states. Fairpoint's been good to work with in Vermont, and they've actually been very good to work with in New Hampshire. It's the third-party attachers in particular, this one, that's been and clearly strategically attached to poles to nowhere. So they'll be
They're
blocks.
blocking. Yeah.
They're blocking. Most of Lebanon is blocked.
That's fine, because they have their own fiber.
Yeah, and they don't want competitors.
And they put most of their fiber up without permits. They don't have licenses to be on the poles, but they're there and then they refuse to move. And Fairpoint, being too nervous about them, refuses to force them to move. So it's
Then you should also be looking at taking a case against Fairpoint for allowing basically the trespassing.
the challenge, Jeff, is the cost of litigation. If you're an entity like Fast Roads, we don't have a lot of money for lawyers and lawsuits.
Yeah, you're talking.
I mean, it's
That's what I was back to the.
Right, at least
Amazon
$100,000.
office. I mean, it seems like a pretty high level situation.
And the governor's involved, and the incoming governor will certainly be briefed.
It should be really embarrassing to their Department of Economic Development that here you got this stimulus money, and you're letting pole attachments stop you from doing fiber. I mean, that's the Valley News story. It's like Segtel is a bad player, and New Hampshire is
Just sitting there,
Waffling.
on its hands.
Especially if you get into a situation where you may have to give back your stimulus money when you kind of let your commitment. I mean, that's the story that we're really getting. You got umpteen however much money, and because illegal attachments are on the pole, the state is not following their laws and carrying out their duty.
Well, you guys are making me feel a lot better about the month.
And you should always stress it, always in your hallway.
I mean, I know how frustrating it was for EC Fiber on funding, state funding and ERA funding front, and, but in terms of when you get the funding in place, the ability to deploy.
Yeah, no, and the ability to bond at the municipal level.
Yep.
In a certain way, I mean, not to an obligation, but still, it's some sort of ability.
You want to just tell them about the Woodstock Library?
Oh, yeah, another method we're trying in Woodstock, I can send you the press release, it's probably on the EC Fiber website, it's www.ecfiber.net, is the Norman Williams Public Library. It's sort of the centerpiece for a campaign to raise, I forget how much money, it's always a couple $100,000, something like that, so that we can get a connection into Woodstock to sort of get things going. And in return, we would, give the library free internet service. We can't give them a gigabyte. I mean, technically, we can't buy that much internet at a good price right now, but they'll get more than they would need. And that's what's happening at American Cross. So we haven't publicized it that much at the school, but we'll pass internet connection. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in schools that have it, and then it'll be interesting to see whether using the library as a sort of mechanism to get the community to support EC Fiber will work. The Woodstock's the same situation. The center doesn't have much cable, so they're all kind of happy. It's all the rural areas.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to go neighborhood by neighborhood, figuring out what works to raise money. At least we have the basic terms done, and that took actually quite a bit of work. We were fortunate in having some lawyers that sort of did it on a not pro bono basis, but
Reduced rate.
well, not the rates are full, but we're not paying them yet. We're paying them when we can. So
Yeah.
Hook up internet to the place.
that's a deferred expenditure. Well, no, the good ones are broken, so they're not. But anyway, it's important to find if you can have partners with legal expenses up front. And we have several partners. I mean, the council and Montpelier, Paul Giuliano, really help. He's sort of the expert on municipal financing. You wouldn't need that here. You need an expert on doing, these are essentially private placements.
Right.
So you want to make sure that it was legally vetted, and there's certain laws you have to follow in terms of disclosure of information, disclosure of risks.
Right.
The risk section is pretty thick. You could lose all your money. You have to be in big capital letters. So the lawyers know how to structure those things.
Well, I look forward to the day when passwords can plug into EC Fiber.
Getting close. I mean, we'll be at Marion Cross, and so if you get passroads, just going across the river.
Well, and we just on Thursday last week finalized our contract with Axia. Axia is the near network operator, and Tilston is doing the network review for us, independent network review. But Axia is currently doing a mass broadband project right across the border in Massachusetts, and they bring a whole bunch of service providers with them. And they also bring $3 pricing cost. So
They have the access to the cheap
yeah,
internet.
to the
We
cheap
can't get
internet.
down there.
So if they can plug into the passwords network and operate it for us, and passwords can plug into EC Fiber station.